Buenos dias and welcome back to another video, my friends. I hope that you're staying healthy and I hope that you're staying safe wherever you are in the world. Today on the channel, I want to talk about the Canon EOS R6 and what to know before you buy it, or if you've just bought the Canon EOS R6, some tips for you on how to set up your camera and some things to think about as you're shooting photography on the Canon EOS R6. A couple things to consider before we get started. If you are currently a Canon EOS R6 owner, please comment down below and mention some tips and tricks that you would have liked to have known before you purchased the Canon EOS R6 that are not necessarily on my list today. Secondly, as we get started today, note that you need to be in the photography or photo shooting mode on the top dial, whether that be manual or aperture priority or so on and so forth. I go into this in a little bit more detail later in the video, but just know that you need to be in one of these modes, the photo modes, in order to apply some of these photo tips and settings. So let's get started with tip number one, and that is knowing what the Q button is or where to find it and what it does. So the Q button can be found on your LCD screen in the top right-hand corner of the LCD screen, or you can find a physical button on the right back portion of your camera. What this allows you to do is once you enable or click on the Q button, it brings up a menu, an assortment of different features that the Canon EOS R6 has, and you'll want to definitely choose from some of these features in the future depending on what that might be. And we're going to talk about a few of these here momentarily. So know the magical, the powerful Q button. For tip number two, I want to show you how to set up your file format type or the way you're going to shoot images, whether they're going to be RAW or JPEG or both. So what you're going to want to do is select that almighty Q button, whether it be the digital version or the physical version, and then select image quality, which can be found on the left-hand side of the screen, and then hit set RAW. And now you can choose between the minus symbol, which just means RAW will be off, or select RAW or CRAW. Now CRAW is a compressed RAW format, so my suggestion would be if you're going to select a RAW format, you might as well select RAW because you want the plethora of data in your image, not a compressed version of it. At least that's my take on it. Once you've selected the type of RAW format that you want for your images, click the little arrow and it will return you back to the menu. And at the bottom of the screen, what we will do is select your JPEG type that you want. Now the JPEG types are either minus, which that means you're leaving off JPEGs, so you only want RAW images. But if you do want to include JPEGs, you can include large, medium, or small format. And understand this, selecting from both RAW and or JPEG formats depends on your shooting needs. So you'll have to figure out whether you want a backup such as a JPEG to your RAW file, or you don't want to shoot any RAW files at all, meaning RAW files you have to edit in a editing software, a photo editing software such as Lightroom or Photoshop or Luminar or something to that effect. If you're not into editing your photos, you just want the photos right out of camera, then I would select just JPEG. And then that way you don't need to worry about the RAW images. They actually add more data to your SD card, fill it up faster. It might not be something you need right away. However, if you're shooting RAW because you want to edit your photos, then you definitely have those. Now you need to figure out whether you want to add a JPEG version of that file. And the highest quality JPEG version is the large format with the smooth curve image or symbol off to the left of the L. So I would suggest and I would recommend choosing that one, because if you want any type of JPEG, my thought would be you want the highest quality JPEG. That's just a recommendation. You just go ahead and select which one you want, and now you'll have chosen what RAW format you want and what JPEG format you want. Now let's talk about .cr3 files. This is the name or extension name that is given to all R6 photos. Once you've taken a certain amount of photos and you are comfortable pulling the SD card and putting it into your computer, and then you open it in your preview from your folder, what you might see is two images, meaning one black and one that's visible or viewable by your preview. The black version is more than likely the .cr3 file, and if it is black, that just means that your computer software, or in its current version, cannot actually read this file. Don't worry, you still have it. What you're gonna have to do is open this file because it's meant to be opened by a photo editor, such as Lightroom, Photoshop, or Luminar. So just know that, don't panic if you cannot open the .cr3 file, because it is meant to be opened in a photo editor. For tip number 4, I want to talk about the lens mount system that the Canon EOS R6 utilizes, and that's the RF series of glass. Now, RF glass, especially the L series glass, is very expensive. So this is native to the new R lineup of cameras. However, you can adapt EF glass to it. But what some people might not understand, and you should know this before you buy, that EF mount glass will not fit directly onto an R series camera, such as the Canon EOS R6. What you will need is an EF to RF mount adapter. Canon sells them. The lowest price one is, I believe, $99, and then you can buy one with a programmable ring on it and also some drop-in filters, so that's up to you. However, what you could do as well is, I think there is at least one third-party company that is now making the EF to RF adapter. I don't know the name, but I'll put it in the description below, or I'll put it somewhere up here on the screen, the name of that new adapter. But know that you need an adapter to actually affix EF glass to an RF mount system. Just know that. For tip number 5, I just want you to know that you have different options or choices for shooting modes when you're shooting photography. You can shoot everything from shooting completely manual, or having your settings completely done for you and fully automatic in the A+ mode on your dial on the Canon EOS R6. The other options are aperture priority, shutter priority, program mode, and flexible priority. Now, I have a video right here that talks a little bit more and goes in depth a little bit more on all of those modes on the R, and they are the same modes that are on the Canon EOS R6. So go watch that video if you want to learn a little bit more about the shooting modes, but just know that whatever you choose, it will be for a different situation more than likely. If you're comfortable setting all your settings yourself, then you'll be in manual. If you just want to worry about, let's say, shutter speed and ISO, then you'll go aperture priority, and so on and so forth. Again, watch this video, or it's down in the description below, more information on shooting modes, but nonetheless, just understand that different modes will provide you with different features and abilities when you're out shooting a specific type of photography. For the next tip, I want to talk about the wonderful eye autofocus and how to know whether it's enabled or it's disabled. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is click that wonderful and magical Q button. Then in the top left part of the LCD screen, you'll see the letters AF. Select it. And then in the bottom left, you will see an L for eye tracking. Click on it, go ahead and click on info, and you will see the words enable and disable, what these words mean. And I wish it was more self-explanatory than it actually is. But when you see the words enable, it's not telling you to enable it. It's actually telling you that eye autofocus or tracking is enabled. If it says disable, that means that eye auto tracking is disabled. So it's a little confusing. I don't know why Canon does it this way. I wish it said disabled, so then you would know it was disabled, or enabled, knowing that it was enabled. But that's the language. I didn't set the criteria or make the camera, so it is what it is. So that's the way you change from eye auto tracking to be enabled or disabled. Wow, I've said enabled and disabled a lot. There's one more time. For tip number 7, let's talk about setting the type of eye autofocus. So what you're going to want to do is select the AF menu, which is the second menu next to the shoot or red menu. Once you select it, select on the line that says subject to detect, and the choices that you will have are people, animals, and no priority. Once you select the subject for the type of eye tracking that you're going to shoot, such as birds, you're obviously going to want to select animals, and then you can go back into the menu system to change it to people when you're actually shooting people out and about, whether it be street photography or portraiture and so on. So have a lot of fun with this because it really does help out when you're shooting animals, whether it be your cats or dogs at home or out and doing wildlife out and about. So give it a go. It's a lot of fun, I'm going to tell you. It's one of my favorite things to do is change that to animal eye autofocus to make sure that you're pretty much on the eyeballs of your animals, and I don't know, the images are pretty wonderful. For tip 8, this is a simple one, but sometimes can go forgotten based on your knowledge of cameras. And this is selecting the info button. The info button on the back right side of your screen allows you to open up different menus on your LCD screen. And as you select the info button, different things will appear on your LCD screen. You might have a top portion which has info, and then you might have the whole perimeter of the camera LCD screen that has info, and then there might be some add-ons such as a histogram that might pop up, and or you may select it again and it'll be clear so you can get your composition without any data on the screen. So there's a lot of things that you can choose from when you hit info that'll bring up a lot of different information for you. Tip number 9 is one of my favorite features on the Canon EOS R6, and that is to be able to enable and disable a touch shutter on the back of your LCD screen. And it just comes in very handy when you want to be able to, let's say, set a 2-second timer or a 10-second timer and then see your image and actually touch the focus and also release your shutter at the same time. It's an invaluable tool, feature that the Canon EOS R6 has, and you can simply get to it by clicking on the info button that we just talked about and selecting it until you see the little camera icon in the left-hand bottom corner, and you can enable it and you can disable it to use it whenever you need it. I love this feature. And finally, the last tip, tip number 10, let's talk about aspect ratios and how to select them in your camera. Once again, you will select the magical Q button. On the right-hand bottom corner, you will see a type of aspect ratio that has been selected. It might say full or 3:2 or something to that effect. Select it, and on the bottom you will see a tray or a menu of different types of aspect ratios. Now, I would recommend that you select the full choice or selection because that's going to utilize your full sensor. Again, you have a full frame camera, you want all the megapixels, and if you need to crop in, you can do it afterwards. So one thing to keep in mind, no matter what aspect ratio you choose, the raw file will always be full and you can crop it down in post. The JPEG, of course you can crop it down, but it will come out in the selection or ratio that you chose. So just keep that in mind. And one last tip, the 1.6 crop times factor, if you want to use it in camera, it's actually going to punch in and give you a little bit more length on your lens. So if you have a 200 millimeter lens, you might have, let's say, 350 millimeter lens, something to that effect. I know I didn't do the math exactly right. Just remember, you can do the same thing in post, and that's crop in, and just know that you're losing some quality by punching in both with 1.6 times crop or cropping in post. You're going to lose some megapixels, but don't fret, it just depends on what you're doing with the image. Well, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you own the Canon EOS R6, please drop some tips, tricks, and features of the camera that you would have wanted to know before you bought the camera. And for all you beginners or just starting out with this Canon EOS R6, congratulations. I wish you luck. Ask me any questions down below. I'd love to answer them. So that's gonna do it. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. Give me a like if you liked any part of this video or it gave you some value. And please comment down below, like I said, let me know if you're thinking about buying this camera or if you have any questions, and ring the bell to notify you of new videos when they are posted. Until the next one, I love y'all. Peace.